Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Miami Valley Fire District Dose of the District podcast. I'm going to be your host today, Nick Sanders, Miami Valley Fire District Battalion Chief. We got some very special guests with us today. Directly to my right, we got the Chief, Chief Steve Johnson with the district. Straight across from me, we got Lieutenant Mike Wall from Huber Heights Division of Fire. And beside him, we got Battalion Chief Josh Augustine from Washington Township Fire. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Excited about today.
Oh, it's going to be good. Yeah. So when I kind of thought about this podcast, I was trying to think of, something good we could talk about. And, we all kind of started at the same department, generally about the same time. And I thought it would be fun just to kind of talk about where we started, kind of the course of our careers and, where we ended up, why we chose leadership and things like that. So I'm just going to go around the table, let you kind of talk about yourself and, where you started and where you're at. And Chief, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that I was a substitute today for Captain Josh Whitehead. Unfortunately, was unable to be with us today, but I'm glad to be here, happy to be here. As far as where I've been and everything, I've been pretty much everywhere.
You said it, dude.
I bounced around a little bit. I actually started here at Miami Township full-time, but I came to West Carolton a little bit later than these guys. It was in 2007. It was kind of interesting because I was friends and played softball with all the guys at Miamisburg, Miami Township, West Carolton, stuff like that. So I was looking for a part-time job. I worked for the city of Moraine back then, and I called one of the captains. Well, then he was a fireman at West Carolton, and his quote was, "It's not a bad place to work." I didn't know any of these guys real well, but he said his quote was, "It's not a bad place to work." So I went ahead and I applied and ended up working there for 17 years after that. So fortunately, got to meet all these guys, and going from there, it was a great experience. So ended up back here at the district about a year and a half ago, and I guess the rest is just kind of history.
Kind of came full circle.
Kind of came full circle, absolutely.
Go ahead. You're up.
I started. I started out volunteering up in my hometown, and a friend of mine was the contractor who was building the stations at West Carolton at the time. And I was a young kid, and he realized I was kind of had the bug, and he's like, "Hey, you probably should head down there. We're gonna be hiring a bunch of people." So I went down there, and that was June of '01, and started working part time. And I started working with, I believe him. It might have been him who came for Nick. Chief Sanders came on first, and then Josh was shortly after that. But in the meantime, in '04, I'd started at Moraine. So I met Chief Johnson at Moraine, and Moraine kind of called to me because they were training more at the time, and like I said, I was a younger kid, and that was really appealing to me. And but kind of go along, like it was West Carolton was. It was a group of fun people. Like, it was one of those things you went in and, you did your house duties and did your stuff like that. And the rest of the time it was hanging out with your friends, and it was like-minded individuals. So, seeing what kind of shenanigans we get into for a day, and Station 2 craft time, we made some crafts up there.
Craft time.
Yep. So we started out, we were joking today, we started out with some desk chairs at the back of the bay, and spent tons of times out there with Nick, and playing our weekends and solving the problems of the world, and then finally got that nice picnic table that I wrote up my career on, and I spent 15 years there, and it was like I said, I have friendships and mentors and people I still call on this day a lot to get me through things. So I'm grateful for everything I had there. So
Yeah, no doubt about it.
My turn.
Your turn.
I'm the young guy here. So just past 21 years on the job. Grew up in the fire service. My father and mom were in the fire service. They started at West Carrollton. Grew up right across from Station 2 at the time, and started working at West Carrollton. It was an awesome place. Bunch of career people from other departments, so you kind of got a flavor for all over Montgomery County. Got a lot of good training and a lot of good experience there. The beauty was you were hanging out with good people, and you got your stuff done, and that was the day. And you go on incidents, and there wasn't a lot of us, so you got a lot of experience being there. It was fun, and been lucky. Grew up in Washington Township. My dad was a medical director there, and started there. Worked my way through. Battalion chief now, so I'm a shift commander. It's a good place to work. We got a lot of good stuff going on. So,
Yeah, my favorite thing about West Carrollton was there were some rules. There were some pretty strict rules. No TV till a certain time and things like that. But what I found when I went there is even after the TV was allowed to be on, you were allowed to be down, go back to your bedroom, do whatever. Guys said they didn't do it. They stayed out.
Yeah.
We didn't turn the TVs on even though you were allowed. We would just, like you said, we'd sit out around the picnic table and we'd talk tactics or training, or we'd pull tools out, just go over them. So even when you were a little more free time and you could do whatever you wanted, guys still didn't. We didn't watch TV. We didn't get in the recliners. We didn't do any of that stuff, and that was pretty cool that it happened that way. So
Except for Young and the Restless time.
Yeah.
yeah,
That was
And you had to
Still
record
to
the second
this-
half of it.
Yeah, so you can make it.
still one of the biggest surprises of my career when we started working and they watched Young and the Restless every day. I'm like, what is going on? People started getting
Everybody.
the Reader's
Yeah.
Digest to
Yeah.
see what was going on when we had to turn the TV off. I couldn't. That was a big surprise. Still talk about that to this day.
absolutely.
So funny.
No, I think kind of what Chief Sanders hit on was like is a group of people. I mean, like Josh said, is you had a lot of career guys, and like when I came on, I didn't grow up in the fire service. I kind of stumbled upon it, and the EMS was never even part of it, and so kind of with that, I got my EMT because someone told me I had to get it so I could be part time. And I remember when my first serious calls at West Carolton, I'm doing chest compressions, and I'm looking at all these medics doing all the fun stuff, and then I kind of knew I had to get that anyways. But it was just like I said, I learned what the career guide was, and I wanted to be that. I wanted that full time job. I wanted to do this for a career at that point. And like Chief Johnson said, it was just a group of people. And like I said, early on, it was a lot of similar age people, and with a couple of older guys and stuff that would mentor us and kind of keep us, the adult on duty, keep us in line when our shenanigans were getting a little crazy. But it just fostered a good attitude and like I said, one thing I've always loved that's kind of carried through the whole career is we'll get it done. Like it may not be the funnest thing to do, but we'll get it done. It may not be the easiest thing to do, we'll get it done. And it kind of grew from that group of people that no matter what they asked for us, if it was something hard, if it's something easy, we'll get it done, and then we'll get back to get back to our shenanigans. So I mean, this thing it's kind of built that base for the rest of my career so far. So.
Does anybody feel like the old guy now?
It's crazy.
So I was involved in a wedding on Sunday, and obviously the younger generation getting married, and I'm like feeling like I'm one of them, and I'm like, I'm not anymore. I'm one of the old guys,
Yeah.
And I can remember, starting out in 2001, 2002, looking at guys that were married, like, man, they're old.
Yeah. And
That's
here
us.
we are.
That's
Yeah.
us now,
Yeah, well, it's the tough thing. Like, I mean, I think all four of us. I mean, is you can guess someone call us immature sometimes, and that's what for me sometimes. Like, I'll have that moment, and I realize like I'm 20 years older than this person.
Yeah.
Like, I am that guy.
Yeah.
and I said that it's fun. Like, as an officer, like where I'm as a company officer, like, I get to still be. Like all officers can be that way, but there's a time for business, there's a time for fun. But it's just like I said, when you're sitting back, you're answering your question, you're like, like you're laughing and joking, and all of a sudden you have epiphany. Like nowhere else in this table is like close to you.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's just a weird transition. And
Yeah. I'm in the mature one now.
yeah.
It's supposed to be.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be a responsible party.
Yeah.
Yeah, still got that little voice in the back of my head that wants to, throw a ball around
Yeah.
the bay or something.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So I was, trying to think of stories that were, appropriate for this. Anyway.
Yeah.
So
Came up with two.
1.5.
We had to edit one.
So my first day, and Mike's probably not going to remember this, but he was working there before I was. Now I started out volunteer with West Carolton, before I worked duty crew. But my first duty crew day, and I'll even go back a little bit further. I started volunteer at Jefferson Township. So great group of people, but a little different folks out there, right? Again, great people, but not so organized like West Carolton was. So first day, I don't really know what to expect. I show up at 6 a.m. and I meet this guy, and his name's Mike, right? And he
And
looks
you were
exactly the same
in
as
for
he
a
does
12
now.
hours.
I mean,
Yeah.
I had no idea. So at 6:01, he's like, "All right, shift starts. We're in the back of the medic. We're checking the medic. We're checking the truck. We're spraying off the front ramp with fire hose to make sure it's clean." This guy never stopped, and I can remember my first 12 hours going home that night, like, if this is what the fire service is, I don't know if I can do this. I never ever stopped. Mike is still that way today. Honest to God, like he is just that guy. Has been for his entire career.
And God love him. I think that I talk about that all the time. I'll toot your horn here. It's just what a great person to start with that would spend all day out there teaching you, just never stopped, never seemed annoyed. Even if he didn't care for you, there was never any, he still would spend the whole day outside working with you. It was awesome. So glad to grow up around you guys.
I appreciate it. And I said, that's kind of like when I went to Moraine, like, we talked about just as separate, like West Carolton was like awesome, but I said like Moraine was a little more structured. Like we had some stuff, and when I was on second platoon with Gary Reddick was my lieutenant and stuff. We would get our equipment checks done, house duties, and we'd head to 28th to train, and we'd do lunch. We head back to 28th to train, and like I said, as a young guy, that was spectacular.
Right.
And I meet Steve on he doing some rescue trainings and stuff, and it's just that mentality. And like I said, my first day. So a little story for me is I never drank coffee until my first day at West Carolton.
Oops.
I had tried it.
Same. Yeah.
I had tried it. It was gross. Andy Shepard. So like I said, I know what a career guy is now, and that's what I want to be. So Andy Shepard, give him some props. Like I said, he built a lot of stuff I have, man. Like I said, one of the best medics I had, solid firefighter to this day. And so he walked up and introduced himself, and he's like, "You drink coffee?" And I was like, "No, sir, I don't." He's like, "You do now."
You do now.
And like I said, I joked with that story, but because like I said, like, well, what if he told you, jump off the bridge or something, a little more gross? And I was like, I'm not going to go that far, but I want what this guy had. I want to be a career, and if I get to chug this nasty stuff down, I'm going to drink coffee.
It's an acquired taste.
Yeah, well, so I had the more sugar than coffee for a while. Now I'm, now everyone who knows me, I'm a coffee fiend, but it's just one of those things. Like he wasn't aggressive, wasn't anything like that. It was just that thing. Like I want that job. I want to do that. And like I said, and he just said, like I said, I had Captain Huffman was his captain, and like one of the things he used to joke about, what's a happy hose? Happy captain. Like neat hose is happy hose and stuff.
Right.
And
Oh man.
it's just
We reloaded several
yeah. I mean, we
beds of 5-inch,
Yep.
4-inch at that point.
And like I said, it's just one of those things kind of built on that. Like, I was 19 years old. So I'm looking at these people and I'm like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to follow and stuff. And like I said, Josh coming on. We had Captain McClure from Kettering was with our group that we worked
Captain
with.
McClure.
Yeah. And it just, like I said, it was just made every day fun. Like I said, because like we had our fun stuff. But I mean, like, cause we wanted to go out there and pull hose. We wanted to go out there, ladder a building. Like I said, I had a group of people that we did that, and it was a networking. Like I said, I started like with Moraine. I met people from my Township, and met that network grew and stuff. And like I said, we went through a phase right before Andy got, right after he got promoted. We had some, what we considered less than desirable employees, and me and Josh, kind of took it on ourselves, not to, harass them or anything, but we were going to show them West Carolton had kind of got a little lax on the rules and stuff like that, and so we just reminded them what West Carolton was like, and some of them left. And like I said, to this day, I think like being younger and stuff, I think maybe I was pushed out maybe a couple that probably just need some education, and as an older person, like I probably should have not pushed them out, but maybe educate them, but that's what we did. Like, and I said, it was nice to have those people there and have the background, the backup, and the camaraderie to do it. So,
yeah, we're talking about leadership, and I think part of one of the notes I have is talking about why we chose leadership, and I think part of what we just talked about, especially with Mike, is I think it's kind of what you are, right? It's not what you choose to do. It's that I'm going to be the guy that's going to go out here and spray down a front ramp and be the first guy to check equipment and train people, and because it's what I want to do, right? It's not necessarily that I'm going to go out and make everybody else do it. It's just this is how I'm going to do it. If you want to do it like me, then we're going to go do it this way. So, it's. I think leadership isn't something you necessarily choose. It's just kind of what you do. It's who you are.
Well, I say real quick, I got a story for Chief Johnson, and I feel fortunate to be part of this. A phone call in a closet. I mean, what's that? I mean, like I said, that was an awesome thing to be part of. Like, I mean, watching you get not your first chief, but basically your first chief job, and I think I said, like, hanging out with like you guys and stuff like that, and obviously I'm like, you guys have progressed and are farther along, but like it's awesome to have that phone call. Like, hey, I'm on this level. Well, you got any advice and stuff? I've called Josh, I've called Nick multiple times about some things, and it's just, like I said, that's what, like I said, watching you guys, like I said, Steve Johnson leading training, like I'm young Mike Wall, like I want to do that. Nick doing his thing, coming back to West Carrollton, and that was, I'll tell you what, some of the funnest time in my career is working for Captain working with and for Captain Sanders. So I mean, so.
He doesn't think the same way. Pretty sure we got him in trouble a few times.
Oh yeah,
Probably.
I guarantee we did.
Yeah.
You talk about, rank and things like that. I don't think rank really matters, right? I mean, a leader is a leader, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Lieutenant, battalion chief, captain, doesn't really matter. I mean, we're all kind of doing the same thing for the same reason.
I think you can't be luckier than to grow up at the era of West Carolton than we did, and I don't mean that badly about now, but the captain corps there was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And they led with a strict hand when they had to, but you knew when it was time to work that they had your back, that you were going to be safe. And I think they brought a lot of us up the right way. And,
Absolutely.
Now there probably wasn't a stronger group of shift commanders.
I've
at
said
the
that
time.
1,000 times.
Chris Barnett, Ed Huffman, and Dave Conkey. It was unreal, and we were all so lucky to be that way. And even to the point where I talk about that now. Like, you're sitting around, like they came out there, and I remember Dave Conkey pulling his wallet out of his
dollars or what?
Yeah, Bruno Big Bucks.
Bruno Big
is
Bucks.
what it was, and you're like, oh man, and you knew at that point you messed up. Like, it's time to get up and go out and do something, because he was proving a point.
Absolutely.
It was we were just so lucky. And I think one of my favorite quotes, kind of touching on what you said, is like, you are who you surround yourself with. Like,
Absolutely.
every time I read that and look at the group that came out of that place, it was just unbelievable.
One of my favorite stories was Dave Conkey, Captain Kunk, and I hadn't worked at West Carolton very long, and I was on, I think, Eddie's shift, Captain Huffman's shift, and then I went to Lebanon, and so I had to switch shifts. So I went to Kunk's shift, and I'd been around Moraine, and I knew who he was, and I'd been on a couple scenes with him, but I didn't know him at all. And it was right, like my first shift at Lebanon was the Sofa Superstore fire in Charleston. So right after that, we met out at the old Roberts building, and it was a flea market or whatever it was, and they had a furniture storage in there, so we were going to train on there. So we all met there. Captain Kunk was there, and he said, we're going to get this training started here pretty soon, but before we start, he said, I want to introduce you to the new guy on our shift, blah, blah, blah. And he went off about me for like 20 minutes. And I knew him enough to say on the scene, I'd say, hey, Cap, or whatever. That's how well I knew him. But you talk about leadership lessons. That's a lesson I learned that day, was he was just like, he knew about me, my career, where I'd come from, everything like that. So it was just amazing to me that and I don't even know how he knew all that stuff, but he went on, and I felt so welcome and part of the crew right out of the gate. And like I said, I was still a pretty new guy to West Carolton, didn't know a lot of people, but just he took the time, and he knew me and was able to introduce me, and it's always, 17, 18 years later, and I still remember that day and all that stuff. And so you talk about captains and lessons learned and leadership. That was just, and probably didn't even realize he did it, but it had a big impact on me. So
Well, those three captains shaped all of our careers.
absolutely.
Yeah.
When you think about it, and the amount of people that went through West Carrollton at the time. You look at the area departments and how many people went through West Carrollton. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I forget sometimes. People say that to me. Oh, you remember that West Carolton? I'm like, you worked there? I forgot.
Yeah, it's impressive.
Yeah, I said for as a newer, to this day, I got promoted, in 2021. So that was 5 years after I left West Carolton, and those guys left. One thing I always used to say with the captains is it could be a stub toe, or it could be a house on fire with people trapped, and they were the same, just even keeled, calm. And a couple Eddie calls was command, fire attack, ventilation, search, and you just never saw him falter. And so, same with Kunk, like I said, you'd see him with those water cans coming up to the house and stuff.
His Mountain Dew.
Yeah, and
Diet Mountain Dew.
as a young person, to watch that, and you're already with, you're with a group of people that is just impressive and that you trust already, but to have that captain come in there and it was nice, and it carried over. And I said it's one thing you realize, for me at least. Like I said, I'm probably the newest promoted officer. Is you always talk about perspective. It's easy to sit back in that firefighter and just nail things. You can see all the problems and stuff, and you get that next rank, and you start seeing a little bit let's chill out a little bit. I need to apologize to a few people from what I said back and stuff. But it is unique. Like I said, when you look back, especially when being that 19-year-old kid, like what these guys did, like trying to do now, like I said, where I'm at, like you talked about me, the old guy, like trying to like remember, like being even keel, being consistent, being reliable, being all those things that you had coming into it, and then just transition so that next person hopefully feels some way down the road that you did the same thing. So I mean, I try, and I think I said it helps. Like I said, knowing you guys and still having you in my life and as contacts. I mean, it's nice to have. But I mean, like I said, definitely a lot of good lessons and just to keep building on.
I got a really good Ed Huffman story. It literally just popped into my head, and this was you and I. So we had just become paramedics, and I don't remember this. I don't 100% even know if we had standing orders yet.
No, we did not.
Yeah.
Or our state of Ohio paramedic
But
cards.
at the time, you could operate under someone else's standing orders. So I'm going back, almost 20 years.
Yeah.
So we get called, I don't know, I think it was a seizure or something like that. Guy was in really bad shape.
It was a pediatric arrest.
Okay.
I remember this
Wow.
call.
Oh.
It was a pediatric
Yeah.
cardiac arrest when it got dispatched.
So Josh and I mean, brand new paramedics.
Yeah.
Probably, maybe a first ALS call.
Scared to
Pretty
death.
darn close.
Scared to death.
Are on the medic together, and we're supposed to transport this patient. And I remember Captain Huffman opening the medic door, and he's like, "You guys got this. You're good."
Yeah.
Like, I believe in you. Like,
Right.
just in that moment, needed that
Yep.
reassurance that it was
Yeah.
going to be okay. And it's that leadership. Now he might have been like, "Oh my God, this is bad," but
Yeah.
in that moment, he was calm enough to let us know that, hey, I got your back. He was always that kind of person.
I still remember that call. It's funny, talking about Ed Huffman just the other day, I was talking about him because we went on a car fire or something on the interstate, and it's like the first time I ever talked on the radio, and I just flubbered it. It was awful. And I remember we get on scene, and he showed up, and he's, "Come with me," and turned me around.
Come
and
with me.
I'm like, "Oh, this is not good." He puts his hand around me, and we're walking away, and he's like, you get in these calls, just turn around, get away from it, think about what you're going to say on the radio, and then just say it, after you repeat it. He's like, you're going to see stuff that bothers you. You're going to be looking at some terrible things. Sometimes you just got to turn around. You got to think that through. And literally just this week, I was talking with somebody who's like, "Oh, man, I messed up that radio traffic because I'm looking at my MDT, and I'm starting to read the words on the MDT instead of saying what I wanted to say." So just that lesson, just this week, still talking about that.
Similar for me is Chief Trick. Another great leader in my
Right.
career and stuff. And I remember, I'm young, like I said, young, and at Marine every now and then, as officers wise, they only had one officer, and depending what company it was. And so I'm riding up, like 3 years on the job on the ladder truck. We catch a first due fire, and I already mumble. I struggled out with my whole life, and I just completely flubbered it. I jump out and I see smoke. It's my first fire. Can't even understand me. So same thing. We go through the fire, and he did the same thing. He puts his arm around me, takes a walk. He's like, "First thing you can do, look that direction. Turn your back to the fire,
Right.
and just use your memory to describe the fire." And he's like, "Just take a deep breath, and then talk." And like I said, to this day, I still like when I have moments, I just take a deep breath,
Yep.
then talk. So
Mike's not saying he probably got like 2 or 3 grabs on that fire. The grab master over here.
So,
Yeah.
It was probably more than just a little smoke.
Yeah.
but no, I said to this day, I remember I said Chief Trick, and I said also another funny Chief Trick story is going through the checkoff. He was a training chief, and so he did the final
Right.
checkoffs.
Oh, yeah.
Virginia DeBola.
Okay.
She had just got cleared on the medic before, and I was getting cleared on the truck the next day. And I heard a story where she had went through a yellow light, and he got a little talking to because she should have stopped. And so I'm driving the ladder truck, and Bill Boss is my FTO, so he's in the back. And so with Billy and Tony's relationship, they were just talking. So I'm driving, he's turn here. Well, I'm coming up, and Tony's got his leg crossed, and I see this yellow light, and I put that truck on his nose so hard I stopped it. He slid out of the seatbelt, and he wedged himself in the little foot area. And all I hear is, "Well, you were passing."
Yeah, I was FTO on a guy one time, and we had to go in part of his checkoff. In his book, we had to go sit in front of Chief Trick, and this kid was just nervous as could be, and Chief Trick, he was pretty intimidating. So he threw him a rope and said he hauled her out tie some knots, and So the kid I called him figure 12 because he was supposed to try a figure 8 and he kept going too far. So he kept flubbing up the knot.
Don't know a knot, tie a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and then at one point, Chief Trick asked him about the fire hydrants. He says, there's pentagon and then there's square nuts on top of our hydrants. He goes, the one outside of my office. He said, which one is it? I'm like looking and I'm looking at the chief and I'm like, I'm like, so he's like, well, I don't know. And Chief Trick looks at him real sternly and says, well, why don't you go find out?
Yeah.
I'm just like, so he walks out of the room and I'm like, he goes outside and I'm like, I said, come on, Chief. I said, I said a few choice words. I said,
I don't even know that answer.
yeah. I said, he goes, shh, hold on a second. He looks out the window and he goes, all right. He said, he's breathing again. He said, all through that whole thing, I didn't see him take a breath. He said, I don't know what nuts on that thing. He said, I have no idea. He said, I just needed him to go breathe. I thought he was going to pass out. So,
I thought this was a new guy trick, like go
Yeah.
water the
Yeah.
station on the front of the fire truck.
yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, man, I said, that's a little harsh, Chief. He goes, shh. He says, I don't know either. He said, I was just afraid he was going to pass out. So he sent him outside. So I was like, yeah, just know your people.
Yeah, one of those leadership things.
Yeah, exactly. So watch your people and know what's going on, even on the simple stuff. So ever since then, I'm called that kid figure 12. So
Figure 12.
I got another good story about Josh. You remember the house fire we pulled up on?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about kind of shaping your career. And
Yeah.
Josh and I are on the medic again at West Carolton, and we're I don't know. It was cold, January,
Yeah.
February. I mean, it was
Freezing
real
cold out. Yeah.
Probably 5-ish in the evening. I know we were just about to get off at 6. And so we're headed up Alex Road, and there's quite a bit of smoke rolling over the road. And he's like, man, that seems like a lot of smoke coming out of the chimney. I'm like, it's probably just a chimney. So he gets over and kind of creeps by, and there's fire through the roof of this house. And I mean, it was
Yeah.
crazy from that point forward.
Yeah.
I remember a family member pulling up in a truck. Remember that? And saying,
Oh yeah. My
family's
family's
inside.
in there. Yeah.
Yeah, that was go time. That was. And
Were you on the truck that day?
No, that was.
McClure maybe.
Yeah.
I knew Nick Anger was driving the engine. I remember that.
Yeah, 'cause I saw pictures because it was dusk out. It was dark like when the.
Yeah.
Yeah, we scared the crap out of those people.
Oh,
As
we
we
did.
broke their
Yeah.
door in.
So you talk about leadership, right? That's kind of where I was headed with the story. Josh and I got a stern talking to after that fire about how we didn't necessarily do everything we should have done.
Yeah.
But as brand new folks, like pulling up on a working fire
Yeah.
that you don't get dispatched to is a whole other beast.
Yeah, trying to get dressed in the middle of Alex Road at rush hour was
In
the
snow. Yeah.
the fact that you even could see what the address was pretty amazing
Yeah.
to me, because I remember just being focused, and then all of a sudden, you get cued off that there's people in there. Oh, come to find
Sets
out
it
it was
to
in
a
the
whole
attic
other
above them. They had no idea.
Right.
But when we broke in their front door, they were very surprised, thinking someone was breaking in their house.
Hey there.
They had no idea that their house
Right.
was on fire. So it was that was quite a day.
Yeah. There were. I know trusses burnt through. I mean, it was.
Yeah,
It was a good time. It was
that was a good fire.
definitely one for the memory bank though.
Yeah,
Never forget about that one.
man, there's tons of fun stuff that we did over there for sure.
I think that some of the stuff, like I said, I guess you can argue if you want to go from a complete 100% safety standpoint. We operate on that gray sometimes with just our staffing and stuff. And I said, I don't know if you remember this call. We caught that car crash down on Elm and Central, right at Clinton time, and we did that. And we came back. Medic was at the hospital.
Yeah.
We got that fire down off a bit and bridle. We jumped into too. We went and did that. And me and him, like I said, back 2 people. Andy was in charge and set the pump and get your line in place. And we put the fire out. And then we needed something off the truck, so Andy threw me in the staff car. We drove back to Station 2, grabbed the ladder truck, brought the ladder truck down. We had a volley bring engine 6. We had a volley bring engine 3. So we have 3 engines, a truck, a medic ended up showing up, the captain's chart. And I remember Angie, I forget the council lady. The next day, Andy's like, "Hey, come and read this," and she sends this long email about how they're amazed with things we continue to do. And I'm like, she really, shocked that there were 7 pieces of apparatus, but there's only 5 people. So,
We got to shuttle people.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
get really back.
So
Let's talk about the real story in that is me and you just couldn't get enough.
Yeah.
12 hours of hanging out and we
Oh,
just
yeah.
couldn't get enough. And I remember that we stayed over late and then we got that wreck and they're like, well, we got to go get fuel now. It's
Yeah.
already 6:30. We were supposed to
Yeah.
get off at 6, and then we better wash the truck because it was raining. And all of a sudden, working fire,
I-
a block
you know,
away.
You just said it. Like, I think that's a big part of the fire service. I'll say, I'm not going to say generations, definitely in our generation, like, I couldn't get enough of it.
Right.
I mean, I was, volunteering other places, working part-time everywhere I could. That's all you wanted to do. That's
Yeah.
all I wanted
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was working full time and was just looking. Was only working one job at the time, and I kind of swore off part time. I was never going to work part time again. I was going to find something else to do. I'd probably gone to Lowe's or Home Depot just to find an off duty job, and it just kept being drawn back. And like I said, it was just, well, I didn't want to do it. I was really reluctant. Andy and I had talked about it for quite a while, and I just called him up one day and I was like, and that's where it's not a bad place to work. It's not a bad place to work. So I'm just going solely on that. Yeah. So, it was like I had no intention of doing it, but, I was working full time, another job, and then I ended up getting promoted at Lebanon and was working a lot of hours, but I always loved coming back and working part time, like you said. And back in those days, if you needed coverage, you put it out there and it was covered. I mean, instantaneously. You didn't have
You
to.
couldn't get hours.
You couldn't get enough hours. Talking about Captain Huffman, he did the schedule, and that's what I always liked about him was I'd put in for 16 to 20 shifts a month, knowing I was going to get about half of them. So I'd get 8 to 10 of those. And then if he was mad at you or you'd done something wrong, you got like cut in half. So one month I got like 4. And I was like,
don't drive through
what
the
I do.
mulch.
yeah.
Don't
I was like,
curb the truck.
so you knew you were in trouble for whatever, but then when you put in the next month or two, you get your shifts back. You knew whatever it was forgiven. So, but that's how you knew you were in trouble, is because he'd cut your shifts.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it wasn't as much by the time you worked there, we'd all had a little bit more time on, but I think that, and this has been a huge leadership lesson, I think, moving forward in my career, is they pitted us against each other nonstop. I mean, that was every single day. It's who knew more, who could do something faster, pull
Everything was a
line,
competition.
get water, mask up drills, like whatever it was. And I think that was the coolest thing. And we all went through medic school together. Mike didn't go with us; he was before us, but it was amazing because we all still stayed friends. It was a healthy competition where we all just wanted to be better, and we used that competition, and that has really been a tough thing for me moving forward, where you don't, at least where I work now, you don't get as much of, that's not as good a motivator as it was back in the day. Back in the day, man, that was all you had to do is just say, this guy's going to do it faster than you, and that's been a huge leadership lesson for me, is you really have to adapt your style as you move on and you deal with different people or different generations of people or whatever, that doesn't work as well as it did back in the day.
Yeah, that's kind of something I've tried to, going forward, we talk about newer people and stuff like that, and it's just understanding that they don't feel the same way, or maybe they aren't motivated, like you said, they're not motivated by the same things we were. And a lot of times I have to sit back and say, I don't understand X, or I don't understand Y. And it's like, I don't understand the person that's, especially a firefighter, that's not motivated by going to a training burn or going to a class or something like that. I go to classes to this day. I was listening to Chief Thompson's podcast from Texas a couple months ago, and he said, I don't go to classes with fire chiefs. I don't need to know what fire chiefs think. He said, I need to know what these firemen think. So he still goes to basic fire, like Andy Frederick, stuff like that. He goes to those classes because he said, I need to know what the younger generation, what they're thinking. And he said, that's why I go to those kind of classes. And I kind of agree with that. It's just, I don't understand necessarily what motivates, so I try to go to those type classes. I like to sit around the bay in the firehouse and listen to the people and listen to their concerns and what they think, because they're not motivated by the same things we were. And so it's definitely a good thing to stay in touch, call it staying in touch with your roots or whatever, but you have to do that because they're not motivated by the same things we were.
And they're the future.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
15, 20 years from now, they're going to be sitting at this table
Yeah.
talking about them being the old folks, and what motivated them when they were younger.
Well,
It's our job to figure that out.
I used a story earlier about the coffee, and that's one thing. Like when kind of transitioned, like as a new lieutenant, like, there was never physical violence, there was never anything like that, but.
Oh yes, there was.
I didn't need to know, like, if
Not that
Steve,
we're gonna talk
if
about.
Steve Johnson told me to do something, there wasn't the why. Steve said to do it. Like there was just times like not that like I said there's obviously common sense. There wasn't like I'm just going to do whatever Steve says. But when it comes to the fire service, when it comes to doing house duties, what Steve said, do it. Nick says to do it. Josh says to do it. And there was never a why. Just I didn't need to know why. Like this guy said it. Like maybe later we had a conversation like, hey, what was that about? So I learned that thing. But when I transitioned, and I said this isn't nothing against like I said the younger generation or the new people coming up, but the why is huge. Like you have to explain why, and like I said, Jocko Willink, the extreme ownership, he has a ton of good things, and I said we were kind of I had a couple guys get that book to me early on my time, and the why once you understand it, like I have this big picture in my head, like I know what I want, so like hey go do this. Well I know what the A B C D and E is. I just told him A, so if he doesn't have the why. Mm-hmm. That's all he's gonna do. So then I get frustrated. Like, what are you doing? Like, why didn't you do this? Well, you didn't tell me. Like, I didn't know that thing. So, I definitely think like there is that happy medium with like sometimes, obviously, it's not a democracy. There's something like that. We just do it. But like I said, that was tough for me. Like this, I just one kid that everything was why. And so one day I asked him, I was like, "You're going to do what I want, right?" Yeah. Then why do you keep asking me? Just do it. And then so he came to me later on. I really respect him. Like he's like. Had not a whiny fit. He's just like, hey, I don't know what the next thing to do. And for me, like I said, back to where we started, like I have all these people. I have all these senior people. I have all these educated people, experienced people. And I don't know about like everywhere, but we have a lot of young people. So they're great people. Most of them are great attitudes. We're hiring very good people. They're just young. And so they don't have that experience to rely on. And as an officer, like I said, I joked when I came on at Huber, like my officer was Lieutenant John Evans. I respect the man this day, like just a very good officer, but I didn't need him. I had a senior firefighter. Right. So he would go do his 360, and I just followed what this guy did. Mm-hmm. And we don't have that anymore. So my senior firefighter's got 4 years on the job, and he's a great dude, great attitude, will do anything I want. And it's just like you come around, it's like, I gotta tell these guys. We need to do this. We need to do this. Like, this is the plan we're doing. This is the why of what we're trying to do here. And it was a big learning curve. Like, just do it. Just quit asking me why. So,
we at the district, we just had 3 senior firemen retire a couple months ago. In 10 days, we lost about 100 years of experience in the district. And I was pretty close to all 3 of them. And we had some conversations. And one of the things I said to 2 of them was, throughout my career, I never really had a true senior fireman. And even though I came here as a battalion chief, now the chief, one of the things I said to these guys is, thank you for, I said, you were the closest thing I ever had to a true senior fireman. Even though I was technically their boss, I looked at them, the senior fireman is just huge. And yeah, you're right. And one of the challenges, or maybe one of, I don't want to say fears, but one of my anxieties is losing those 3 is we took a monumental shift in this department from, we looked at our roster one day, and we had like all the guys with over 10 years of experience and all the guys and girls with under 10 years of experience. And it was like in a week, that top shifted quite a bit, and those with under 10 grew exponentially. And all the guys we're obviously hiring here lately are all the 1, 2, 3 years experience, or we just hired a couple that, one graduated from EMT school in May. Yeah. So brand new. New to the area, grew up in Hawaii, and now he's here. So he's a great kid, great guy, learning a lot. But you've got to understand that those senior guys are gone. So
well, you're talking about leadership, right? I mean, it doesn't have to have a rank.
No, definitely not.
More time on the job. Yeah. I mean, we see a different shift in that. Important. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That the senior man is not necessarily like the most, like, they don't have a ton of time on the job. No. They might not have 30 years on the job, but it's a mentality.
It's a mentality.
And that was Andy Shepard for a lot of us. He wasn't the most senior person there, but he was the one who taught us and who made sure that we stayed in line and that we were making the right choices coming up, and really was the unofficial officer.
Absolutely.
And we run into that in my organization. We're a young job, and we try to tell them, like, hey, you have 15 years, and in the grand scheme of the fire service, 15 years is nothing.
Right.
But now it is a lot.
That's huge.
And that senior man mentality, it comes with, just how you act and how you do your day-to-day operations, or how you're teaching new people.
And they have to want to do it.
Yeah, right. It's not easy. It's extra work. Yeah. For sure.
And I think it's hard, like I said, I don't know, like, your onboarding and your stuff like that, but we've had a ton of people that Friday you get your results, and Monday you're starting 40 hours.
Right.
Yeah.
And I said, great. Like I said, great people. Like I said, I mean, obviously, like I said, you're not. Sometimes you don't always have great people, but we have great people, and it's just like I said, some of these kids are drinking from a fire hose.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like
Oh, yeah.
like I said, I had a year. I had a year as a paramedic when I got hired at Huber Heights. So I wasn't nothing. Like I said, I mean, and I went from a place of down south where we're 8 minutes from Miami Valley to where I'm 15 minutes from Grandview. So you talk about learning curve, and I basically learned how to be a paramedic at Huber Heights, and I talk about this day like there's and we still have it, like from our chief down. I mean, we have high expectations, and the one caveat we have is it was back to the whole seniority thing, is it was firefighter driven, is because we had a lot of senior guys, so you never had officers, but seldom. If you got talking to by an officer, that was probably a pretty big mess up. You had 5 firefighters telling you like, hey, you screwed up.
Right.
Like, hey, this is what's expected of you. You didn't meet that expectation. And then, like I said, I have a story with a guy who wasn't on my shift, but I had 2 overtime shifts with him. And Huber, when we call for the fire piece, we calling for the crutch. You're calling for the crutch, or calling for a better paramedic.
Gotcha.
And
There's that unofficial mentoring right there.
Yeah.
And so I go on this call, and like I said, I'm new, and I said like at Marine we had 3 people, so that was a different dynamic
Sure.
too, because now I'm with 2 people, and so I call for the crutch, and I get back, and he politely educates me. I probably shouldn't have done that, and he gives me all these reasons. I'm like, got it. Well, like exactly like that shift, I have all this in my head, and I'm like, I can do this. Well, I should have called for the crutch, and it was thankfully everything worked out. The guy made perfect recovery and stuff like that, and so I walk in the building and I get educated again. Like, weren't you even listening to me? I gave you all these reasons,
Right.
and so. But my point is like I said, it was very firefighter driven, and that not that the chief, like I said, my chief is one of the smartest dudes I know. I mean, really is. I mean,
He is.
and driven and has the direction that he has for our division. That's awesome. But like I said, the difference is like, and for you, like if you come to the firehouse, like you're always welcome. I mean, you're the chief. You're the boss. If you want to drive my truck, you can drive my truck. But you used to have the firefighters that pushed, and you could just kind of guide it. Well, now it's kind of reversed, and it's the officers kind of have to do that because we're that seniority. Like we're the thing. And I do, like I said, I have a younger crew. I just lost my senior guy. He had 23 years on. He retired 2 shifts ago. So my next senior guy right now has 4 years, and he does, like I said, does a great job. But it's just the firehouse, and like I said, back to the unofficial stuff was like, I don't care if you have 2 years on the job. Like, I mean, that's back to the West Carolton thing. Like, I mean, it was all young people that set the pace.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing, is recognizing that. Like, so you have 10 years on a job, 15, 20 years. That's awesome. And I respect that. And I relied on my senior guy a lot, and he more than he realized.
Absolutely.
And like we talked one day, like as an officer, I feel that I don't pump anymore. I don't do stuff, but I still better be able to teach that stuff. Like, that make me relevant. And we were talking one day, and he's just standing by, and I was like, hey Grant, like, speak up. Like, you do this still. Like, I'm just teaching. Like, I guarantee you have pointers that. So he finally did that. I'm like, dude, I want you to do that. I value that. I mean, that's there. But like I said, back to the West Carolton thing. I said, it's just, like I said, 1 year on or 10 years on. It's just that mindset, and that's where I think I think we'll get there. And I think we're all probably struggling with just getting these people to realize, like I said, day one, set that good habit, set those good things, and they'll carry you through the rest of your career.
Why did you guys choose leadership? I'll say formal leadership. What made you want to promote the first time?
Man, I don't know. I just felt like it was the right thing to do, and you see the job that they can do and what the impact you can have, and I think that was a huge portion of it. And in our organization, that was pretty normal. That's what you did with some time on the job, is you just tried to move up, the chain of command. And so we did that, seeing good officers, growing up with them. You wanted to emulate that, and like going back on the senior man too, is that, it's great, but my counter to some of that is I think you learn better from people that are your age. Because I remember getting on with Mike, and Mike had a couple years on me, but I wasn't looking to the captains that knew more and had more experience and were, had that presence, because they're the captain. They're supposed to be that way, right? But I looked at Mike and was like, man, he's got 2 years on the job. He knows all this stuff, and he acts this way. Like, if he could do that, then I should be able to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that was such a huge impact on me that you try to push down to the young people. Is it's not what the fire chief is doing. It's like that guy that has about an equal amount of time with you, or the one who got hired right before you. How are they acting? And that's who you should be emulating. And being that guy, then you should act that same way. Yeah. And, you know, taking on leadership roles or whatever, I think is just like, it's a calling that you want to make. You want to make changes in your organization. You want to lead it in the future. I think it's a calling. I personally think that.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, my first promotion was I was part-time fireman at Mason, and back when it was Mason Deerfield, and when it split, Chief Goldfeder promoted me to lieutenant. And I still remember I showed up first day, split happens. We're living in a trailer, and so I showed up. I'm a lieutenant. I got my red helmet. I show up, and I was like, I think I waited. Because I expected Chief Goldfeder to show up and just impart all the knowledge I needed. Now I'm a lieutenant, and I kind of like just sat around and kind of waited for this day. And it never, you know, I finally realized it wasn't coming. That, you know, I was supposed to already kind of have an idea. So it was kind of trial by fire. But, you know, you expect that, and then you look back on, like we've been talking about all day, all your experiences up to this point, Chief Trick, you know, Chief Huffman or Captain Huffman and all that. And you just rely on that kind of stuff, and you start thinking back to the things. And so when your question is, you know, choosing leadership, I don't know if I chose it so much, or it was like, okay, that sounds cool. And then, you know, and fortunately or unfortunately for my career, I've been kind of in the right place at the right time, maybe. And, you know, you talk about the closet at Andy Fredericks or whatever. Sometime we can tell a story about that, but yeah, it's just, but it was just kind of one of those that some of it just kind of happened, and, you know, and was I ready? I don't know, but you go with it. You rely on your mentors and the things you've learned in the past. You call your friends, and you rely on that, and you just go with it. So
I think it goes back to it, you know, talking about Mike at the very beginning. You know, he wasn't checking equipment at 601 and, you know, washing bay floors and doing all that stuff, you know, because he wanted to be a leader. It's because he is a leader, right?
Right,
I mean,
right, 100%.
You know,
right.
I think it's just kind of who we are.
There's no book on it.
Well, I mean, look at this conversation. Is that, you know, like we're kind of talking with promoting as leadership, which is not necessarily like the accurate description of what a leader is. Is that the person who, we'll say, has the lowest rank in the room is the one we all keep referring to, of teaching us, you know, those things. You know, you get to ride a tiller every day, so I don't know that you're really in the lowest.
Oh, don't even start the tiller.
Oh,
there we go.
It all goes back to the tiller.
I had to drop the tiller. That's just so everybody out there knows why we're sitting on this side of the table. You know,
The firemen are on this side. And
yeah. So, but that's a huge thing. Is that, you know, it doesn't have anything really to do with rank. It's just who you are every single day. And I think that's the biggest thing is when you go to a class or you try to impart some wisdom or read a book, I mean, it really just comes down to your everyday actions and the person that you truly at your core are. I think that shines more than anything.
like you said, you can't. One of my favorite quotes is, "I can't define leadership, but I know it when I see it." And I think that's
great.
a lot of what we've got going here. Is you know it, you try to emulate it, but you know who to go to, just because maybe it's a feeling. It's just in your gut. You see it, and you're like, "Man, that's a guy you can trust, or a girl you can trust." Or, that's a person that when I have a problem, these are people that I put in my memory bank or my phone bank, and these are guys that I call when I have an issue or I don't know what to do.
Well, and it's not always the good. I mean, I think that, like, who you are as a person, like, pulls you through the bad times, too.
Absolutely.
And I've been having this conversation, I feel like I'm at a peak right now that the crews that I work with are doing outstanding. The calls we're going on are outstanding. Our organization is moving in a great direction. And I just feel like you're one decision away from being the guy that everybody's mad at. Yeah. Because when you're in an officer role or you're in a leadership role, that doesn't just always mean that you get to be everybody's best friend. That doesn't always mean that, you're telling them what they want to hear. The Andy Shepherds of the world, I remember vividly some of the times where I'm just like, oh my God, what, him yelling at me. And I think it's great. I mean, I'm so appreciative of that now. Or the conversation with Mike where it's not like, oh man, you did such an amazing job. It's like, what were you doing? That's the nice version, is that, that true leadership, you know, it's not always a fun thing. And I think that that's some of the things that people struggle with the most is when it comes time to hold people accountable, or it's time to have a hard
Absolutely, it's
conversation.
hard.
But when you are that same person, you know, you'll ride through, you know, I've been at some low points in my life in the last few years, and you just keep being that same person that you are, and, you know, you'll get back to a good place again. I truly believe that.
Captain Shepard pulled me out one day, probably 4 or 5 years ago. It was just early in the morning, or maybe it was the next shift. I don't even remember. But I'd left the medic dirty. Got up in the morning, went home, did whatever, left the medic dirty. And all he did was pull me aside and just said, "Hey, you know, you did this happen."
Yeah.
And he walked away. That's all he said. And if you're the kind of person, if you're a leader or just a fireman, that's all he had to say. And to this day, I feel horrible that I put him in that position. So like you said, if you're that type of leader where you have respect, you're humble, because I have another saying is there's 2 types of firemen. There's humble and those that are about to be. Because this job will humble you. You will screw up.
Some still don't get that.
You're
They will at some point.
you're one call away. I mean, you're going to be
that's true.
humbled. Something's going to go wrong. And that's why I said, you know, be humble. Don't be that guy that's, you know, perfect and sings your own praises. Let other people talk about you. And that way, when that day does come, you're going to get support, not ridicule, for the most part, I hope. But the point is, Captain Shepard, he had that mentality. And all he had to do was he called me out, and I felt terrible, not mad at him. I was mad at myself that I put him in the position that he had to say something to me.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you it never happened again. So.
And that's a good character thing to have too. I mean, I remember how many times we got you in trouble and you were our captain, and you know, you never wanted to do that. There was never an intent to. And when you have respect for people, you don't want to ever be that way. And it's hard to take criticism, and I think that's one of the hardest things to do. And I am not good at it, but I think like being able to be accountable to yourself and be like, hey, this isn't. I shouldn't be mad at you for saying that to me. I should reflect into, you know, what did I do and what part did I have in this?
I put you in this position.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think the other thing is, like, for me is, and that's why I try telling, like, I don't ever, I can't really reflect back on it, but I don't ever want my firefighters to worry about me.
Right.
Like, I get paid more. I tested and I got in this position. So the tricky part is I think we're kind of on your guys' point is I think someone missed the mark that you have to take those consequences too. Like, yeah, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to have a good thought process. I'm going to be able to defend my reason, but you may not may agree with this, and I'm going to have to live with that. And you have to take those licks. And the point, like, I have is like, I don't work for you, but even like my chief, like, it's hard sometimes. Like, no, it's not fun getting that talking to and getting educated on. And like I said, listen to their points easy.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just not fun to be in that spot. But on the same token, like, kind of what you guys talked about is like, I felt bad that, like, we were even in this place, but it goes back to, like, I thought I had a good idea, and I thought, like, I can back the idea up, and like I said, it's one of those things, like he talked about, like, what, yeah, I see that, but what about this, and this, like, I didn't think that, and I think it's just owning those things, and realizing, like, yeah, I get to be an adult today, but sometimes being an adult sucks, and we have to live with those, and like the character of it, like, I have, like, so there's a quote I just had recently, and it goes back to, like, I don't know how you guys felt when you were starting out and stuff as, you know, your promotional ladder, like, I think there's this misconception, like, I'm a lieutenant now, or I'm a captain now, like, now I'm going to rule the world. And
Right.
you quickly get, that's the humble. You're
Magically going to know everything.
Yeah, you get humbled real fast in that aspect.
Oh, absolutely.
And what, for me, I finally, and it didn't take very long, and I said it was nothing big and bad that happened, but this quote was, culture is how employees' hearts and stomachs feel about Monday mornings on Sunday night.
Yeah.
And that for me, for like my company, that's why, like I said, I try to, like I said, I'm still competitive. I still like I still want to be first in. I still want to be I still want to be first in the door and stuff. But for me, it's like I just want to focus on this. Like, let's shut the noise off. Like, let's do our job right. Let's you know, we know the expectations of our boss. Let's get out the door quickly. Let's do good care. And I want you to have fun in here. Like my number, like when I go through my expectations with my new employees and stuff, my final expectation is have fun. My whole career's been fun. Like I said, like this table right here, I've had fun my whole career. And if you can't come into work, and like I said, you have bad days. I mean, especially I'm sure the higher you go, like you have more bad days because your day is affected by more people. And but have fun. Like if you can't have fun this job, like you're missing out. Like I said, I mean, just like what you talk about, sitting around a coffee table, sitting around a table and just not even talking about jobs sometimes. Just like your stories, like it's just like it's good people. We're here. Your people you work with want to do good things. No one wakes up in the morning like, how can I screw up?
Yeah.
No one's like, how can I give Chief Johnson a bad day?
Chief-
no one does that.
Chief Goldfeder told me that one day.
Yeah.
He said, once you're a lieutenant, you're not allowed to have bad days anymore. You can have them, but you just can't let it show because if you have a bad day, everybody has a bad day. So, like you said, come to work. You're having a bad day, put it behind you. Sit down at the coffee table, sit down at the kitchen table, have a cup of coffee, and start in on that, and kind of put your bad day in the background, because if you have a bad day and you portray that, then all your guys are going to have a bad day, and that just, and I don't want to say failure, but that's failure on your part for the day.
I think that's a great point to wrap it up. Have fun, right?
Absolutely.
I still enjoy the job. I know you guys do.
Oh, yeah.
It's what it's about.
Yeah,
That's the greatest thing about this job is it's fun.
This was never my intention. When I was in high school and when I first started college, the fire service, I had no background in the fire service. It was nothing. And now that I look at, 30 some years later, I thank God every day that this is how it turned out. It wasn't supposed to be this way. I got lucky. And that's why I try to tell these young kids, I said, it is truly the greatest job in the world. I have friends all over the country, and I have friends that I could call up today, and if I needed something, they could be 3 states away, and they'd be on their way. And they wouldn't even ask why. They'd be on their way. So I'm just very fortunate. It's been a blast. I can't imagine doing anything else, and I'm just so thankful that this is how it turned out for me.
Yeah, you always keep your eye on the prize. At the end of the day, we're here to serve the public, and keeping firefighters happy and the people who are worth happy, to make them deliver a good service to the people that we want, or show up at a fire, know their stuff, show up at extrication, and be just spot on. That's what at the end of the day the job's about. That's what the leadership is about. You make decisions based on what's best for the community, and that sets you on the right path. And I'm glad to be a part of this. We've been lucky to be a part of a really great group growing up, and I accredit a lot to where I'm at today because of that. And I am sad that we don't have a pot of coffee here on the table. It's how we started. And so thank you for having us. Yeah.
Oh, thank you guys for coming. I think it was great.
You got out of this without a lot of tiller talk. Kind of upset about.
That needs to be a podcast all on its own.
I said the tiller talk was not allowed to be talked about, but I knew it was going to come up at some point.
All I will say is, until you have one, they're an amazing piece of apparatus. People,
sure
like I said, real quick, people ask every day internally, why Heber Heights has a tiller? And I said, you come drive Heber Heights streets, and just the maneuverability alone sold me on that truck. But also, truck works number one.
That's
so,
right.
So
what do we say? Above all, assignment to a truck company should be considered a promotion.
Those that can't be firemen.
I'll admit that.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us on A Dose of the District today, and have a good day. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.